Hi folks, you're with Tas today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about politicians and various articles in the media, or propaganda, globalist propaganda that are doing the rounds, that are claiming that even if everybody in the world switch to electrical vehicles, that it really wouldn't make any difference to the electricity consumption or electricity prices or the ability of the electricity industry, the energy industry, to deliver energy to the households, or to the the recharging stations. Now, what's the basis they make this claim? Well, their argument is, you have to sort of read down the piece to the article to understand this, and it's quite a bold claim, and it's how the globalists work. They work on these assertions, and the assertions become the factual basis for then the lies and the untruths that they subsequently spout. So we all know that we have to change. We have to change. We all know. Everybody knows we have to change. And then they go on with the lies. Now, wait a minute. What's this? We know we have to. What change? What? How do we know? Well, were you just claiming that? Experts have said, well, what experts? And there's no pushback by the media at all. And they report the press releases from globalist controlled, the NGOs or governments or whatever, and they report it all as fact. So the claim is this, that everybody is going to have mass solar panels on their roof, and that they will only charge their cars, their electrical cars, they will only charge them up during the day at peak sunlight during summer. And that this means that there will be no pressure put on electricity supply, any central electricity supply, because of that fact. Well, wait, hold on a minute. I mean, this is absurd. I mean, people will only drive their electrical cars in summer, that people will only charge their cars at peak sunlight during the day. In overcast days or in winter days, or where there's no sunlight, they're never going to use their cars, and so they won't need it. I really can't get my head around that sort of reasoning, and I don't think anyone really could if they. But no, I haven't seen a single article that explores this, explores the reality of these absurd claims, and or an interview where there's been any pushback against against these claims. And first thing, if you look at the cost of putting in a solar array, that sufficient solar panels on your roof to run your household, and also to say charge a car, and also to have the fast charging units on there. Now, say you've got a large enough solar array, depending on the quality of the panels, I guess, but you're talking 26 to 30, 34 panels you would need. And there would have to be during the peak sunlight period, and this would have to be in summer, or well, not necessarily in summer, but certainly in a peak sunlight time, and which would be not a cloud in the sky, and sort of between sort of midday and 3, and so you've got quite a narrow time window, and then all the electricity that you would capture in the solar panels, if you're going to charge your car in that time, would need to come from every bit from the solar panels, which means for the rest of the day you've got not enough solar energy captured through the panels to do the rest of your house. Now, to have that many panels, you would need a fair-sized dwelling, so that you couldn't have a small sort of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom compact type place. You would need quite a large house to do it, and therefore that house would have a certain amount of energy consumption. And so you would then, but that means you'd have no energy left. And if you were driving your car on a regular basis, no, I don't know whether people would do that. Now, the other argument they put in, well, people that would do that would people would have the solar panels would charge their car, actually wouldn't use their car very much. They would use it maybe 2 or 3 times a week, or maybe going on a vacation. The rest of the time they would use public transport. So they wouldn't have a high level of demand for car charging anyway. So that would mean that they weren't using. So this involves a number of things, because it means that people are going to buy electric cars that are much more expensive than petroleum-powered internal combustion engine cars. So they're spending a lot there. Then they have to spending a lot. And if you look at the cost of a full solar charging array for cars to do a fast charge on, then it's quite expensive. You're probably pushing somewhere in the region of $30,000 to $40,000 to put that in. Then maybe you've already got some solar panels. You add more and then put in the special charging unit for the electric car, the fast charging unit, the intensive charging unit. But it's still going to be beyond the financial means of say 85% of households. So how they would afford that, I don't know. And they would need bigger houses in order to have the room to put the solar panels on. So there's that as a consideration. Then you look at wider energy consumption. So the idea is that you have a very expensive solar array, which most people can't afford. You don't drive your car very often, and you need a big house to do it, and you would use public transport and not the car. And so it involves just a serious change in behaviour, using public transport instead of a motor vehicle. Now, for people who say in a city area, I get that public transport's easily available, so you probably wouldn't drive. It's too expensive to go in downtown. Just the parking alone costs a fortune. So I get that. But then you would have a smaller dwelling, and part of the wealthy elite, the richest 0.5% or something. But then you would have a much smaller dwelling where you couldn't have that many solar panels on there. Now, if you couldn't put the solar panels on, or the tower block on the other side of you is going to block the sun for most of the day, then you just couldn't do that. So the whole lot of logistical things. So really what they're selling in the propaganda is a total and utter fantasy. And one of the big sort of complaints about, or the detractors of all this green energy bullshit have said, is that if indeed once you get to a certain threshold of cars, that electrical cars that need electricity to charge up, and this includes trucks for heavy transport and this sort of thing, where they don't get the option of saying, I'll use public transport. They've got to charge the vehicle to use it for goods transporting. Once you get to a certain stage, then it's more electricity needed the entire grid could provide, many times more. So in reality, it's impossible to switch to electric cars if they're in anywhere near the same quantity as gasoline, internal combustion powered engines. So there's two things have to occur. The amount of cars on the road has to fall by something like 2/3, and the cars that remain can't be used all the time. That instead public transport. So there's a lot of changes in human behaviour and things like car ownership and things like discretion of travel. And one of the beautiful things about a car, even if you have public transport, is that you can get into it and go anywhere you want at any time. So if we decide we want to, spend a weekend in the mountains, or down the coast, or here or there or anywhere, we can just get in the car and go. And there aren't always public transport links to these places we want to go. And sometimes there are public transport links, but you have to take public transport to here, then a bus to there, then a train to here, then change trains, then another train to so-and-so, then a bus to so, that sort of thing. And instead of, we can drive there in 2 hours, or it's 5-6 hours using public transport, given the circuitous route you have to take. So there's a lot of changes in behaviour that are needed in order to make this green agenda work. And I have no doubt they'll try and force us on it. At the moment, they're forcing it on us by artificially pumping up the price of energy, which forces then a change in behaviour as the globalists would see it, and they can lean back and say, well, it's your choice. We're not telling you what to do. It's up to you. This is a free country. You go right ahead. We'll just make this 10 times more expensive than it should be, and then so you choose another option. Now, I was listening to a government goon, like a completely globalist controlled flunky, and they were the interviewer was it was quite a soft interview, but the interviewer was saying, well, you're looking at the green agenda, we're all going to be green by 2050 and this sort of stuff. How will you achieve that? By consumer choice. The consumers will choose to do this because it makes sense. And he sort of let a few things slip, and it shows us how arrogant these people are. That, hey, we'll just make everything other than green energy so expensive or so difficult to access that people will choose green energy because it is the easiest of the options, given we've made all the other options too hard or too expensive. Now, but what about market forces? But if we allow market forces to dictate it, then people will not choose to go green. So we have to force them to go green. And which is like, we force mass migration, we force green energy. So everything is being forced upon us, and they're quite, if you get them in the right moment, and they are sure the interviewer's not going to throw any questions at them or challenge them, they tend to let their arrogance sort of, ride roughshod over all reality, and they, or their ideological arrogance, ride roughshod over all reality, and they just demand. And so, well, look, this is how it is. This is what we're doing. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And this is the case with electrical vehicles and the energy anyway. Now, I did some sort of preliminary prima facie mathematics where I looked at the price of energy and took out the proportion of subsidies that go to green energy. So green energy is horrendously expensive. So they have to subsidise it heavily in order to make it even minimally viable. Then the cost of that subsidy is then put on cost-effective energy, that is fossil fuel electricity, such as coal. Now, Australia has a lot of coal close to the surface. You don't have to dig a million miles underground like you do in Europe and elsewhere. A lot of coal close to the surface, and it's good quality coal. It's not that brown, shitty coal they use in China or anything. This is good quality coal. So, if you want to burn coal at all, this is the coal you burn. And so Australia is uniquely placed to have very cheap energy because, again, high quality coal close to the surface that isn't expensive to get at, although it's expensive it is in other places. So Australia is uniquely self-destructing and moving away from green energy. Now, the green energy thing is because Australia's coal is so accessible and such good quality, the green energy agenda here in Australia is remarkably expensive compared to the rest of the world. Like, say, Germany doesn't have access to much coal, or the coal they do have access to is really expensive to get out of the ground. So the relative cost differential between green energy and coal, for example, coal is not as great as it is in Australia. So in Australia, green energy is 5 times more expensive than coal, whereas in Germany it may only be twice as expensive. So Australia is uniquely placed to have cheap energy, but this is which would make Australia a very competitive economy. But the globalists are hell bent on pushing green energy, even in countries where it's very economical to have coal. Now, I just want to add to this that in Australia's case, Australia, given all the coal that's mined and exported, Australia still produces, assuming you count all the coal that's exported and that burning in around the world, that Australia produces, I don't think it's even 1% of the world's greenhouse gases, whereas China and India produce, far more and have much less efficient economies in the process of all this burning of fossil fuels. So if you wanted to do something about it, you do it in China and India, but instead they're targeting advanced economy like Australia and forcing that cost of transition onto the population that never wanted it. No one's ever voted for it. And if you had a referendum today, should we do green energy and pay 10 times more than we need to, or should we have affordable electricity bills and transition to green energy as technology permits? There is no chance that green energy, in a referendum, that green energy would get up. Nobody wants to pay 10 times more than I have to for energy. So these are part of the propaganda. But what got me was this idea of if everyone has these massive solar arrays on their roof and only charge their cars during peak sunlight in summer, then there'll be no extra demand for electricity. What a fucking joke. You've been fantastic to your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.